Hello and welcome to our game this Monday afternoon with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by Michael Verney and brought to you by OurGame. If you want to get some of these great jerseys, maybe this Offaly one, after the weekend we saw in the faithful county, glory for Shinrone. If you want to get what Michael Verney's got on that side, or any of the brilliant ones that you can get on the site, use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. So it's great to be here on this Monday. We do have a competition going on. I'm sure people have realised that we're doing a lot of coaching clinics at the moment, and we've plenty of them coming up. Just displaying a few of them on screen. The one coming up most closest to now is going to be the one in Naas, but there's also ones in Donegal and in Longford. If you do want to win a couple of free tickets, we've just launched the competition today. You can enter by putting the best comment on this show on YouTube. So 2 tickets to a coaching clinic of your choice. You have to follow us on all the social channels to qualify for it. But win 2 tickets to a coaching clinic of your choice. Not a bad little ticket, not a bad little offer there. Worth 80 quid just to put in a good comment.
Yeah, the best comment would be one that takes a pop at me or you, I'd say. If I'm doing the judging, it'll be a good pop at you. If you're doing the judging, it'll be a good pop at me. But like that coaching clinic, like all those coaching clinics and the one you've done so far, top quality coaches on show. So then it's a lovely little prize, beautiful prize.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just launched one that's going to be in Moneygall, and we've in which is obviously on the Tipperary Offaly border. And then there's also going to be one we're just announcing soon, somewhere up north. We'll let you know where. Richard Hogan says Shane has finally given in and has converted to Offaly. All your work has finally paid off, Nick. Right, so we have an early contender there from Richard Hogan.
Richard, we don't want him. We don't want him. He can stay where he is. He doesn't know whether he's Tipperary, he's Dublin. He can stay where he is. We don't want any lads like that. Either you're all in or you're all out.
Hey, wait now, hold on now. Is this the lad who runs with the hare and hunts with the hound? You were over at Wicklow when it suited you, and then you're back to Offaly again, huh? I don't think they wanted you back in Offaly.
I've roots in Wicklow. I'll have you know. Moneygall's an interesting one though, Shane. Moneygall is in Offaly, obviously.
Some of it.
The pitch is in Tipperary, I think, is it?
The pitch is in Tipperary. So when Obama landed in Moneygall, he actually landed in Tipperary because he landed in St. Flannan's Park there in the pitch.
It's mad, isn't it? It's crazy, yeah. Like there's Moneygall is in Offaly geographically and playing the Tip Championship. Carrigan Riverstown is in Tipperary geographically and playing the Offaly Championship. It just amazes me. Anybody that's like not from Ireland or doesn't understand the GA, like how would you make sense of any of this? They don't make sense, but that's what we love about it. It's like the boys playing with the Bars for the hurlers, Cahillans and a few more last week, and then playing against the Bars yesterday for Castlehaven. You couldn't concoct anything like that in any other sporting organisation other than the GA, and that's why we love it. It's also why we hate it at times, and we love to hate it, but there's nothing like it.
Hey, so you wanted to discuss before, and who's the Erling Haaland of the GAA? I mean, he's ridiculous. What is it? 3 hat-tricks already in the Premier League, which matches the record of some of the greatest players we've ever seen in the league. Who is your Erling Haaland of the GAA?
Well, I tell you what, I saw somebody tweeting it yesterday, and they were basically saying like that. I don't know if I'm sure some do watch wrestling like I did back in the day. I don't watch it as much now, but they said Erling Haaland is the Brock Lesnar of the Premier League. Just this absolute physical masterpiece almost that just towers over everybody. Immediately, the one that came to mind for me would have been Michael Murphy, christened the man-child, while he was still about 18 or 19. Like he was a fully grown man. Playing against boys even at underage level. Remember him even in that under 21 final. He actually missed the penalty the same day against Dublin, but he was such a big man. He's only probably about 6'2", I'd say, but he was just so physically huge. That would definitely be one. Johnny Matter would be another one that springs to mind from a hurling point of view. And he was like that county final clip, which is basically like, it was like, it's not a man against boys, because Thomas's are a serious outfit, but he was just going around creening lads. And there's a word I haven't heard used in years, creel. That was the word when we were growing up, when you done a lad, basically you creeled him. But it just came to my head there. Yeah, Johnny Matter in hurling and Michael Murphy in football would be the 2 that spring to mind.
You'd also tattoo a lad.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, he absolutely tattooed him. I'd say the ones that are coming to mind for me are these days. Gerard Hegarty is putting on a bit of a sort of an Erling Haaland show, and David Clifford, obviously.
Yeah, like Clifford. Clifford hasn't changed much since his minor days. Like he was, what is he, about 6'3"-ish, about 14, 15 stone. If you were making a prototype of what you wanted the modern footballer to be, it would be David Clifford. He's big enough that he can just cause wreck, but not that big that he's in any way slow or anything like that. He literally has it all. He would definitely
Kyle Hayes.
Yeah, Kyle Hayes would be another. I can't think of his first name, but the McLeanan chap that played for the Tyrone football under-20s this year. Matty McLeanan's son, I think. Remember, like, he was literally handing off boys. That would definitely be another one that comes to mind. Great commentator from Jack Lennon, Drago from Rocky. Definitely. Ivan Drago is a bit bigger than Rocky Balboa was there. And TV Street just says the goals Hegarty has been scoring. Even I know David Blanchfield caught a ball over him and stuck it back over the bar deep in injury time. But I think it was the last point Limerick got. Hegarty literally shoved Blanchfield, who's a big man. He's raw because he's young, but he's a big man. Shoved him to the ground. Probably, it was never going to be called, but probably. And then struck it over from about 100 yards. Like Hegarty is a guy that manhandles fellas. Hayes will be probably something similar. Murphy's obviously coming to the end of his football days, but it'd be interesting to hear what other people think. And even growing up, who was the Erling Haaland? Who was this absolutely unstoppable physical force who also had all the skills and was able to just dominate teams?
Yeah. AP123 says, is James Madden, the hurler, the same guy who was playing for Ballyboden footballers? No, I was at that match. I was watching that one. I was at the game yesterday with Kilmacud and Thomas Davis. No, it's a different guy. He's the guy who's gone down to the AFL, but he's just back now for a little while. So he was togged out the other day. Emil89 says, Johnny Maher had the biggest hands of all time. Some man to catch a ball, all the more impressive that he's missing half of one of his fingers, whereas a fake half black finger when hurling.
Yeah, actually came up at close quarters with him in a challenge game in Borough one time. Kind of wears a cap over it almost. It makes it easier probably to hold the hurl. I suppose I hadn't meant to bring this up, but one guy that would definitely come to mind that dominated games like Erling Haaland is the late great Brian Mullins, who just was such a physical force. Very sad with Brian passing away last Friday. He played his first game in 74. I think he was brought in as a 19-year-old. He was only a teenager, brought in by Heffo, his Vincent's clubmate. He played his last game. I think he was taken off by Heffo in the 85 final. I never got to see him live, even as a kid or anything like that. But just looking back at some of the clips and like just him, I read a piece that Paddy Cullen did yesterday in the Mail with Micheál Clifford, and he just said Paddy Cullen was literally looking at when he kicked the ball out between Jack O'Shea and Brian Mullins. He was literally nearly, the crowd would gasp, and he was just totally lost in, oh my God, look at these two of the best footballers of all time going at it in the air. And he said he just would get lost in games looking at it. And Mullins was one of these guys that could just take a game by the scruff of the neck. I think there was a clip from, I think it was the 79 Leinster final where Dublin needed a score to level it. Mullins catches a ball. Paul O'Kelly upends him. He throws the ball at Paul O'Kelly. The ball is thrown in. Mullins gets the break and just goes soldiering down the field, ends up passing the ball into Bernard Brogan, who scores a goal, and Dublin win. And here was a guy who was an absolute force of nature. And even coming back after his car accident, he was 18 months when he couldn't run because of the effects of that car accident. Probably wasn't the same player when he came back, but could still dominate games and use the head maybe a lot more than the body. But yeah, an absolute icon. And condolences to all of the Mullins family, like one of the greatest of all time. And even though he only joined Vincent's when he was 16, he actually joined Vincent's because Clontarf didn't have a team at his age group, and he joined Vincent's. And he was I think he played rugby with Leinster. He played cricket with Leinster as well. I think he was just a multi-talented sportsman, and he'll definitely go down as one of the greatest of all time.
He certainly will. And I suppose we'd also like to extend from all of us our condolences to the friends and family of Gino O'Loughlin, Waterford Camogie player. So that's also awful news. I interviewed Brian Mullins a couple of times, but notably a one-on-one piece in 2014. I think St. Vincent's were on a club run at the time, going into the Leinster Championship. And he was talking about that car accident that he'd had and his unbelievable comeback. And, you know, he was age 25 when that happened. And what he was talking about was, well, at the time, a Laois player had been killed in a car accident as well, which was very, very sad at the time. And he goes, he was referring to his own one, and he goes, that particular incident, and sympathies to the Louth player. I suppose every time I hear of a car accident or am made aware of a fatality on the road, it does strike a chord at me. It's unfortunately a part of the environment where a huge percentage of the population use cars to get to work and perform family duties. There's a great dependence on the car, and with that comes the danger of driving too fast and accidents and whatnot and fatalities. I drive as little as I can myself. I cycle most of the time, but I'm in a car on an ongoing basis, so I'm aware that I have to be careful, and I try to be careful to make sure I don't go back to the place I went to 30-something years ago. And then even, you know, he's obviously a very active man for the vast majority of his life. I saw Mossy Quinn, who's of course a St. Vincent's clubman, tweeting a picture of Brian, and he was in workout mode. And Mossy was saying that during COVID, he was struggling for motivation to train at one stage. And Brian Mullins sent him a picture at 7 a.m, all togged out and ready to go and do a bit of a workout himself. And if he was like, if Brian can do it, I can certainly put myself in a position to do it as well. So obviously a huge inspiration to so many, and an absolute great of Dublin GAA. Just in terms of other players that were man mountains, a little bit like Erling Haaland, Satanta O'Halpine could have been, says Barry John Maher. And we have a comment in from Harburn 6, Joe Canning at the start, 2-12 off the Rock in Thurles. To be fair to the Rock, he was sent off and he was off the pitch for a lot of that. So you can't blame him for all of it.
Donegal, I think, was sent off that day, actually. I think the Rock stayed on the pitch.
Was it? Oh, was the Rock substituted for? Did Coleman come into the team that day, or did Anthony Nash? I think it was Coleman who came on. Was it?
Coleman came into the nets, but that was after someone was taken off. But Donegal was sent off, definitely on 2 yellows by Barry Kelly.
Diarmuid O'Sullivan went off because I remember that John Gardner went in full back, didn't he?
I don't recall the Rock going off that day. Being honest with you now, I don't. You might check it there. I don't recall the Rock being taken off that day. I just recall Canning being an absolute force of nature. I think I got a scutcheon from Milan. That was the famous day I got the scutcheon from Milan, and I was sitting there depressed looking at that second game. But it perked me up maybe to see how good Canning was that day. He was absolutely unbelievable. But like for a young lad to come in and do that in his first championship season, I think they played Laois and they played Kilkenny earlier on that year as well. I think that was their first year in Leinster. Absolutely unbelievable to do that. And he said subsequently that was one of the biggest mistakes he ever made, because the expectations were too high after.
It was 2009 when he played Kilkenny. That was in Tullamore when he did the John Cena thing. But yeah, I'm just looking at it here. Patrick Horgan had just come in for Timmy McCarthy. Martin Coleman came on for Naughton. And then Naughton came on for Diarmuid O'Sullivan. That all seems a bit strange. But like you said, I think Don Logue, he would have definitely... Yeah, anyway, Naughton came on for O'Sullivan. So O'Sullivan was taken off during that game. By the way, Paul Mannion didn't play for Kilmacud Crokes over the weekend. He's going to be out for 3 months. Now, Crokes still beat Thomas Davis. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I suppose part of me was thinking, is this continuing a pattern of, you know, he's been around for a while. Like he played in the 2013 All-Ireland final. Like he's probably 29 at this stage, give or take. I might look it up. But is it going to be just more and more injuries for him? How much is he going to be able to do with Dublin next year? Or is it just the case that he's unlucky? He's 29. He'll be 25 next summer. But it's probably just another impact injury with the ankle. It's not ideal to get it, but maybe he will be okay in time and he'll be back to full form.
I think it's just bad luck, Shane. It's not like, as you said to me off air, it's not like he's breaking down with a hamstring or regularly, or breaking down with a calf or a muscle tear or something like that. It's in 2 impact injuries. The one against Naas was kind of half been tripped and fallen on his knee and doing damage. It was kind of similar. It was the way he landed against Coola that day. But it is a bit worrying. There's 2 surgeries in this year, no matter what way you look at it. And he's probably gonna miss. He might be back potentially if they're in an All-Ireland club semi-final or final, but realistically, he's gonna miss probably the Leinster run at this stage, and he potentially miss some of the. If Crokes aren't still going, he'll miss some of the preseason with the Dubs as well. But I don't know. It mightn't necessarily be a bad thing in a way. Obviously, personally, he wants to play with Crokes and that, but to me, I'd be just easing him back in with the Dubs in February or March and that type of thing, and having him hit the top of the ground then for the championship. But it's not ideal, but I think it's more bad luck than anything else.
Yeah, as I said, keep the comments coming in. The best comment will be in line to win 2 tickets for a coaching clinic of your choice. So that has to be on the YouTube channel, and you have to subscribe to all our different social channels. Let's move on to Shinrone. They're now the Kings of Offaly for the first time ever. What sort of scenes are we seeing down in Shinrone today? Would you reckon? And actually, we put out a tweet saying who's the player of the weekend. Donald Markin of Shinrone says Martin O'Maher. So what do you reckon Shinrone is like this morning?
I think they were actually in the County Arms in Burr last night. Because Shinrone's only a village. There's not there wouldn't be a hotel or anything like that. So definitely went in there for food after. Whether they stayed there or not, I'm not sure. I'm sure they went back out to Shinrone and soaked it in. But this was their second final appearance, the first in 62 years. They were beaten in 1960 by Drumcullen by a point in controversial circumstances. Had a load of emigration then. The last time they were in a county semi-final before last year was 2012. Before Trevor Fletcher came in this year, they'd lost 9 knockout championship games in a row. 9 knockout championship games in a row. That's unbelievable, really. Then they beat Rhinus the reigning champions, going for 4 in a row in a quarter final. They beat Belmont with 2 maybe somewhat fortuitous goals in injury time. And then they produce an absolutely near flawless display yesterday in the final. And I thought it might happen because there's been a kind of a tag towards Shinrone, maybe, that they've not been able to get over the line in some big games in the last couple of years, that there's been a bit of white line fever. But they kind of fell into the final, and there was no pressure on them going into the final. It wasn't a free shot, because it's never a free shot when you get to the county final. But they played well in a quarter, poorly in a semi-final. And nearly everything went right for them yesterday. Alex Kavanagh, who's a young player with Kilcormac, is going to be a very good player. Had a couple of goal chances. I think it was the 4th and the 13th minute. Both were missed. Had a couple of wides. Kilcormac probably, not that they could have been out of sight, but they could have been well on top early on. And Shinrone, having started slow, really, really kicked into gear. They were 10-8 up at half time. A couple of good points before the break. And they just cut loose after the break. Hit 16 points in the second half. A lot of them from distance. When they were going poorly, Kieran Cleary was brilliant at the edge of the square. This is a guy who would have broke through to the senior team and played senior for 4 or 5 years, and then would have actually dropped back to the senior. He was in with Offaly, I think, for a year as well on a squad, and then would have dropped back to their senior B team. And then he comes back in this year. And he was a handful in the semi-final. And he was an absolute nuisance yesterday, particularly when they weren't going well. He ended up with 5 from play. Sean Cleary clipped in with a few. The Sampsons, Jason and Killian, I think, hit 4 apiece. Killian was brilliant from wing back, dominated the game. Michael Cleary the same from centre back. Darren Crane, actually, who was corner back. I presume he still does. He's an amateur jockey as well. He would have ridden in a couple of races at Leopardstown, even bumper races at Christmas the year before last. He was brilliant yesterday. Eamon Cleary pulled off an absolutely brilliant save from Keelan Kiley in the second half when they were under pressure too. I'd say the scenes, that'll go on for a long, long time. And, for them to get over the line in the fashion that they did, I'd imagine it was hugely satisfying because, as I said, there had been that tag out there that maybe they'd choked a couple of times in games that they could have won, and they've just absolutely blown that out of the water now. The sense of relief, lads like Mark Markin, who's 36, Michael and Sean Cleary are both 30, Darren Crane, I think, is 33, Darren O'Mara is 34. They've been soldiering a long, long time, and I'm sure they will relish this one. I'd say for the few minutes when they woke up this morning, I'd say they were unbelievably happy, and then a hangover hits them, and I'm sure they're continuing on. I don't know who it was said it a couple of weeks ago, and I read out in the show that they were just going to drink through the hangover. It was Paul Nolan, the horse trainer. He's involved with Davistown, Courtnacuddy, and he just said we're going to drink through the hangover, and I'm sure that's what the Shinrone boys will be doing for the rest of the week.
And we see here from Porter, is Shinrone not in Tip? It's about a kilometre maybe inside the Offaly border, isn't it?
Yeah, very close. It'd be very, very close to Cistercian College. And it's funny, Trevor Fletcher's from Roscrea, and Roscrea wear red and white. He couldn't have gone much closer to manage a team who are, quite similar to Roscrea in the sense they border each other. They wear the same colours. He would have went to Roscrea Vocational School. There would have been a lot of Shinrone guys in that school. Just on Trevor Fletcher as well. Before the semi-final against Belmont, if they'd lost that, Trevor Fletcher managed teams would have been beaten in 6 semi-finals. They got over the line. He'd lost 5. They won this one, and then against his own club, who he played an All-Ireland club final with Kilcormac in 2013, when he kicked the goal and was the top scorer from play, he undone lads that he knows so well, and he lives in Kilcormac. his 3 kids play with Kilcormac. As he said to me, I'm sure they were all shouting for Kilcormac, but in the back of their heads, they would have been, half secretly shouting for me as well. But yeah, an interesting time in the Fletcher household for the last couple of weeks. I'm sure it was interesting this morning as well. There he is, front and center. There were great scenes, Shane, as well. The video of the mass exodus, I suppose, onto the field from the terraces and everything yesterday. Like, that's what it's all about, a team winning their first county final. That's why the longing to be involved in these things. Like, when your time is up, I suppose your time is up, but you look at teams enjoying that success and you'd love to be a part of that again. But I'm sure Shinrone are absolutely lapping it up. They play Naas in Leinster now, so it'll be interesting to see how they go on there.
Yeah, so they have a 5 or 6 week wait. I mean, Naas will be playing a little bit of football in the meantime. They have that county final to come. But both teams will be kind of sitting on the fence for a little while. But I suppose they'll be able to get challenge matches here and there. I mean, Leinster teams will go to Munster or Ulster, Connacht teams or whatever. So they will find a way to keep going with challenge matches. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Like, if you were, let's say you were there with Burr at the moment, would you like to be rolling on to another game in probably 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time, maybe have a full week of celebrations, we'll say, and then be able to get back going again?
It's a funny one. I think it's great that any of the teams that have won county finals, be it Road last week, be it Clough-Ballacolla, who we'll talk about yesterday, and Shinrone, that they can really enjoy it. They don't have to worry about going back training for a couple of weeks, realistically. But then you're just thinking as well, like, why is the gap so long between Offaly county final is finished, hurling and football, Laois hurling final is finished, Kildare hurling final is finished, Wexford hurling final is finished, and yet they're not playing until the second weekend in November.
Well, this just shows you that the club window isn't being managed correctly, that you could give back that week and then the GA dictate that every county has to start their club championship on X week and has to be finished by Y week, and maybe we'll build in 1 extra week for a replay or something like that. And then we could be starting all the provincial club championships middle of October and then have everything comfortably finished by early December.
Yeah, well, like, Leinster's a funny one because it's obviously not all 12 counties are involved in the provincial campaign, but there's a decent chunk of them. But like, there's no reason for some counties to be so far behind. Sometimes there's a bereavement within a county or something happens and the game is delayed. But it does seem like an unnatural gap. We talk about like weeks being absolute gold dust, and they are. I don't see why there's such a big lag between these games. Do you know what I mean? Like, Ferns is a different one. Ferns is played in a split season. They've been waiting for ages. But Offaly's finished now, as I said. Laois is finished. Kildare is finished. Kilkenny have a semi-final next weekend and a final the weekend after. Like, Dublin are at semi-finals next weekend. It could probably be squeezed in a small bit more realistically.
Yeah. ML89 says the boost of winning the first county title ever, or after a long time, has been a big boost to teams for a club run the last 10 years. Thomas's, Kilcormac, Borrisley, Clarenbridge all got huge boosts, obviously kicking on to do really, really well beyond their county after ending a long famine. St. Finbar is still on for the double in Cork. We'll be talking about that. There's actually a few other clubs that are still on for the double. For example, Upper Church, who we'll also be naming or talking about later on. Na Fianna in Dublin, Kilmacud Crokes in Dublin. So across the board,
Mead, yeah,
Naas, who we just mentioned a few minutes ago as well. So God knows what will happen with the Jewel Club. Is it realistic though? We kind of ranked them on Friday. Is it or Thursday, I should say? Is it realistic for a team doing the club double? I can't see it. Maybe someone like Crokes, where they have basically 2 completely different teams, it's more doable there. But when it's going to be the same set of players, I don't think it's realistic.
Yeah, and I was saying it to you last week. I don't think it's a legitimate double unless there's probably 8 to 9 players of an overlap, whereas Crokes only had, I think, 2 last year. That's why what Schlockneil do is unbelievable. Like, there was talks a couple of years ago that they were going to have, obviously, they were going to have to play the 2 All-Ireland finals on different days. They were going to have to break with tradition, potentially, if they got to the 2. I think they got to the football, didn't get to the hurling. But they're the really legitimate one. Upper Church probably as well, and Lockmore would have definitely been last year too.
Yeah, Cratloe a few years ago as well. Could it be a Na Fianna versus Crokes club final double? It could happen because they're in separate sides of the hurling semi-final draws, but we'll come to that a little bit later on. That would be very, like, Upper Church and JK Brackens played each other in the 2 quarterfinals, so there's a precedent of it happening where teams meet in both codes, but 2 finals, that would be very interesting again. You were down at the Laois County final down in O'Moore Park. Clough-Ballacolla completed the 3 in a row against Camras, 124-16. Will I play the clip we have with Willie Dunphy? You interviewed him afterwards, or will I ask you about the game first of all?
No, we chat about the game. It was a brilliant performance from Clough. They were going for 3 in a row. I kind of said on the show here, there was just a question about whether that Leinster final hangover was something that would hold them back and be like a doubt in their mind, or something that would drive them forward. And it definitely looks like it's driven them forward. Even just chatting to a few of them after, like, you know, when you ask someone a question and you genuinely know that they probably haven't thought too much about it, they thought the idea of redemption was after they won yesterday. Now we get another crack, but they hadn't lost the run of themselves and be thinking, oh, this is a revenge mission from step one, which I think is the best way to go about it if you possibly can, because their campaign last year had been outstanding until, you know, at 20 minutes onwards against Ballyhale, where they got pasted. But everything before that was absolutely brilliant. They took down the Raps in good fashion. They took down Crokes in good fashion as well. So sometimes, as Willie Hyland said to me, it's just a bit of an SH1T show, and there's very little you can do about it. That happens sometimes. And when you go through, like, Ballyhale can do that to absolutely anybody. They did something similar to Clara yesterday, and they mightn't have put all the goals by them, but they can do that to anybody. So they've bounced back absolutely brilliantly. Picky Marr and Willie Dunphy were outstanding yesterday. Hit 115 between them. Willie hit 1-5, 1-4 from play, 1 line ball, and Picky hit 10 points, 5 frees and 2 65s, 3 from play. Some absolutely brilliant scores, and those lads in particular were on it from the start. Stephen Bergen the same, Darren Matter brilliant at fullback, Broderick brilliant at centre back. Was Kevin Mulhall, a diminutive enough kind of player in the middle of the field. He was influential. He set up Willie Dunphy for the goal. Whereas on the other side, I think they had 8 scorers from play. Whereas on the other side, Camras were just really reliant on frees from Zane Keenan. They had 2 goal chances inside 15 minutes. And Kieran Collier, if he had them back, he would probably maybe even have carried the ball in a bit further for the first one. Both were saved. Both were saved by, I think it's Killian Dunn in the goals. Cahill Dunn, I should say, in the goals. And it kind of took the wind out of their sails a small bit. Clough were leading 6-3 at the end of the first quarter. Then Camras got back to 8-7, and then Clough just took over from there to half-time, hit 1-5 without response. The game was as good as over at half-time. They were up by 9. And even though Camras got it back to 7, I think it was 115-11, Clough hit the next 5 points, and the game was as good as over. A real complete kind of performance, the sort of performance you want to deliver in a county final. And what I like about Clough is, and I know Declan Laffin is kind of a no-nonsense type of a manager, and he had some interesting quotes afterwards about thinking that a lot of coaches overcomplicate the game. They played long when the long ball is on. They played short when the long ball isn't on. And I think they mixed their game up quite well. And I think they'll be a formidable challenge for the Dublin champions when they play them away on the second weekend in November.
And did you, looking at the game, did you think here's somebody that Willie Maher and Dan Shanahan might be interested in for next year? We obviously had Willie Maher on the show last Thursday. Did you see any players that you think might have put their head above the parapet?
Probably a lot of the same names, Shane, to be honest with you. Dunphy and Maher obviously were brilliant. Stephen Bergen's been in around the squad. Ronan Broderick's been around the squad as well. I like the keeper, I have to say. I thought the keeper was very good. Thought his distribution was very good. But they're a very even kind of a side with the couple of star names up front. Nobody probably really jumped off the page. Just from what I was looking at anyway, a lot of really good club players. And with the potential for obviously 4 or 5 that are in the county squad. One player I did like when he came in was Jordan Walsh, who I think tore his hamstring off the bone earlier on this year with Laois. He came in and got 2 points. He's only just back in recent weeks. There's a guy, we think he was centre forward last year. If he could, he'd be a great player to have coming back now. He's fresh as a daisy now. He'll be back, mad for road in the Leinster campaign. Willie Hyland started yesterday, actually. I think it was his first game to start all year. He said he was nearly saying to the management all year, like, he was getting 2 minutes and 3 minutes. And like, am I going to get 10 or 15 minutes? Or what's the story? And then they told him last Tuesday he was starting the county final. So he couldn't really say anything. And I think he's expecting his 4th child on Friday as well. So it'd be a great week for him. But real dominant display from Clough. Camras are definitely a coming team. And will definitely be there the next couple of years. But Clough won the intermediate. I think they won the minor as well, or are in the minor final, I think. So they're going absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, they definitely are a quality team, and without question didn't do justice to themselves in that final against Ballyhale Shamrocks last year. Very interested to see where they go this season. The comments coming in, they keep coming. Could dual players come back as pure hatchet? Robbie Cotter, unreal for St. Michael's in football and lighten it up in the hurling too. Same for Brian Hayes for the Bars, could offer loads to both inter-county panels. If Killer won a win in Tipperary, they border Shinrone. That would be a massive thing in that area, both sides of the border. And Laura aren't too far away as well. They'll be looking to win the intermediate in Tipperary. So you could have that whole part of the border just basically coming apart at the seams if they're all partying together.
Just what I said to you, I think I said it on last week's show. Like the Shinrone boys were all in Thurles last week for the Kilruane game. They would have went to school with a lot of them, even in Borrisakane and that, and to be friendly enough with them. So having both endured pretty tough times over the last while, you know, with results on the pitch, Shinrone are now champions, and I'd imagine that would spur Kilruane on a bit as well. So yeah, a big couple of weeks in those kind of neighbouring areas.
Yeah, Pure Hatchet also adds, worth mentioning that Castlemartyr are going for their third championship win in a row next weekend in Premier Intermediate. A huge achievement there. So the final of the Westmeath Championship was also played over the weekend. Castletown-Geoghegan ended a 5-year wait, thanks in large part to Niall O'Brien's 8 points. They beat Clonkill by 22 points to 114. We'd actually talked about how it was pretty low scoring, the tallies that won the finals in Westmeath in the last couple of years. That 22 points is probably slightly above what some of the teams have won it in the last few finals. So pretty decent tally there. And Alan Mangan, former Westmeath football player, over the Castletown-Geoghegan team, and they're getting it done.
Yeah, and it's like listen, they imagine the notion of having to, you know, wake up the Monday morning after being beaten in a 4th county final in a row. Like I couldn't imagine what that would be like. I've lost my last 4 I've been involved in, I think, as well, but at least the pain was spread out over a couple of years. Imagine losing 4 in a row. Yeah.
Are you a specialist in failure? Is that what's going on here, as Mourinho said about Wenger?
Won my first 4, lost my next 4, and that's shocking. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
shocking.
very Wenger-esque. Wenger had all his success early on, and then he started making an ape of himself after that.
Well, I'm already an ape, but it would have been. I always said it, like you take one at the end of your career, just when you know what it means and you know how hard it is to get. But the Castletown-Geoghegan boys would be absolutely flying today. That had been coming. They'd have been only beating a score in the last 3 finals. It's not as if they were blown out of the water or anything like that. And we've seen Niall O'Brien with Westmeath, how good he is. And I think the Buddha Mangan played with Castletown-Geoghegan and might have won a couple of county finals with them as well, mixing that with obviously been an inter-county footballer at the time as well. So they'll be absolutely delighted to get over the line there. I think Angus Clark was back as well. Obviously one of the best players Westmeath have produced over the last probably 50 years as well. So yeah, I what we talked about earlier, at least there is a lot of time for those guys to enjoy the fruits of their labour over the last few months. Probably a bit too much because it's 5 or 6 weeks is probably far too much. 3 to 4 weeks will be well enough, and buy a few weeks back for the rest of the club season.
Yeah, you might have mentioned there Luke Loughlin. He scored 4 points for Clonkill. People would have seen him play with the footballers this year. Angus Clark, who you mentioned, he was in at centre forward. And then I suppose it was wides that ultimately killed Clonkill here, because they had 15 compared to 7 for Castletown-Geoghegan. And in a fairly tight game, that's a bit of a killer there. Obviously, there was only 5 in it for a finish. The Wicklow final, that was also on. Bray Emmett beat Glenealy at the second time of asking. Obviously, they played last week and it was a draw. But Chrissy Moorhouse, a name that generally you tend to mention when we're talking about Wicklow, or certainly with Bray, he got the job done again.
Yeah, he went to town. He was kept quiet the first day. It's very hard to keep a player of that kind of talent quiet 2 days in a row. He ended up with 1-10, 1-5 from play. McCormack, I think, got 1-1. He got an early goal as well. Bray were 5 up at half time and kind of kicked on a bit further in the second half. Kind of thought this might happen. They were the better team the first day, and maybe just left it behind him or left the door open for Glenealy. And there was no door left open from an early stage the other day. Bray dominant, and as you say, 4 in a row now. I think they go into the Leinster Intermediate Championship from here on. I've kind of been surprised, even in recent years, and even when they won their first couple of county titles 5 or 6 years ago. I think they're capable of a run at intermediate level. So it'd be interesting to see if they can get a run. Naas are obviously gone out of that equation now, so that's a real big hitter out of that picture. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can make maybe a bit of charge at that level.
Yeah, do you think they can?
No, I think they can. Yeah, there's there's more than a sprinkling of county players there, and when you have the likes of Morehouse, the Maloney's as well, McCormick, a lot of guys that have been involved with Wicklow, I think they can. I think they'd be disappointed if they didn't get in around a semi-final or a final at this stage.
Yeah,
managed by Paul Carley, Shane, as well. I think he's been over them the last 4 years. Obviously, he got that goal in the 2004 Leinster final against Offaly, and like a very well-regarded coach. I think he was involved with Bowden maybe 5 or 6 years ago as well. Very, very good coach by all accounts.
Yeah, the Antrim semi-finals ran over the weekend. Cushendall beat Lochgiel Shamrocks 3-14 to 2-16. I saw last night Neil McManus was presented with the Man of the Match award there, so he had a great outing. And Dunloy, I suppose we kind of thought that Dunloy were going to beat St. John's, but they did it very clinically by 22 points, 5-22 to 1-12. So that was obviously a tough day at the office for the St. John boys. Conal Cunning and Keelan Malloy, they were absolutely unmarkable. Joy to watch. Cunning got 2 goals in the first half in the 10th and 25th minutes. Nigel Elliott, he chipped in with a goal in between. Keelan Malloy got off the mark on the 16th minute, and he had 2 more brilliant points before half-time. And look, it was always uphill sledding for St. John's, and they're just a really, really tough team to keep with. And I think Dunloy will be probably fancied against Cushendall in the final. It just seems like the gap might be slightly growing up there in Antrim.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say on that is I know which squad I'd prefer to be involved in after the semi-finals in terms of who's going to be battle-hardened going into a final. And Cushendall will be seriously battle-hardened going into the final. Now, it would still be an upset if they were able to pull it off. But, potential element of complacency and not have been, maybe Dunloy not have been tested maybe as much this year in comparison to other years. They've been pretty dominant so far. So, Cushendall definitely have the right preparation going into the final anyway if they are going to pull off an upset.
Jeez, I think that'd be fanciful thinking, in terms of like Dunloy not coming in fully kind of cocked for this one. I think it's very, very difficult to bet against them, especially the manner that they've played in those finals in the past couple of years. I think they've been brilliant. Okay, so let's move on to the Kilkenny Championship. Will we start off with the relegation? Because, look, we got it wrong. We put our hands up. We kind of were looking at how Lisdowney had been performing in the group stages, thought they're going pretty well. They might see off a Ballyhale team that have been conceding more scores, but it was 21 points to 114 to Ballyhale. They limited Lisdowney to 15 scores, and they shut us up.
Yeah, the old dogs for the hard road, in fairness to them. Like Lisdowney's results coming into this, they had pushed the Village very, very close. The Village are now in a county final. Sometimes the form book is just ripped up. Ballyhale produced the performance when the need was the greatest, when they were facing the prospect of going back down to intermediate again. They came good. I believe Tommy Ronan put in a huge shift at midfield for Ballyhale. And, they'll be absolutely delighted to have stayed up. Obviously a very, very proud club. Played in the either 2000 or 2001 All-Ireland club final against Eugene Cloonan's Athenry. I think, remember when he scored that, he got that famous score with the full-backs hurled. He picked up they both collided, and Cloonan picked up the closest hurl to him and ended up getting a score and handed it back to the full-back with a smile on his face. But they'll be delighted to have stayed up. And then in the intermediate relegation, the Fenians survived again. So they sent their neighbour, St. Loughton's, down to the junior grade. The Fenians just have that kind of know-how in these type of games. And I think JJ Delaney, who we seem to talk about in this type of scenario at nearly every year at this stage of the year, where he does something magnificent to kind of save their bacon. He was on hand to set up Conor Tobin for a goal midway through the second half, and that helped to seal the victory. Freshford did have chances. Liam Hickey scored a penalty apparently, but it was disallowed because the ball was struck beyond the 21-metre line. And that's a rule that's not enforced that much up until now. So that obviously had a big bearing on the game. But fair play to JJ, evergreen, timeless player who just keeps producing it, whether it's a fullback, wing back, or full forward, no matter where he is. Once you have it in the head and you have it in the hands, you can still do it no matter what age you are.
One of the lads was saying to me, one of the Kilkenny boys was saying, he's played in 14 relegation finals for Johnstown and lost one.
That's outrageous, isn't it? Like, you talk about being a big game player. we've said it before, they are the biggest games because Fenian's such a proud club with like some of the greatest hurlers that Kilkenny have ever produced, including JJ. And the prospect of going down junior would be absolutely frightening to everybody involved there. And that's an outrageous record, really. Like, it's a record you don't want, but it's an unbelievable record all the same.
Yeah, Richard Hogan says margins in Kilkenny are so small, really anything can happen. Cash is king. Owen Cody becoming one of the best forwards in the country. Another brilliant display yesterday. We'll come to that. And Thomas Sharkey, JJ has as many relegation wins as All-Ireland medals now, if not more. I think he has more relegation final wins. What is it? 9 All-Irelands he has, isn't it?
9 All-Irelands, yeah. So he's 13 relegation final wins.
So let's come to Ballyhale Shamrocks. 127-15 points win over Clara. Now, the semi-final was played between James Stephens and Dixborough. So this was to get forward to play Tullerone in the other semi-final because the game was delayed. But they're looking really, really impressive. And Adrian Mullen, and as our commentator, Cassius King mentioned there, Owen Cody just in imperious form.
Yeah, I think Adrian Mullen got the goal and put them into a 116 to 9 points lead at half time. But I think Owen Cody and Adrian Mullen combined for the guts of about 113 from play, which is just outrageous. And apparently a lot of it was outside of the goal. A lot of it was from out the pitch. And they can just hurt you from everywhere. Evan Shefflin, I think, put over a few from distance as well. I think most of their injuries have cleared up as well. Brian Cody is still to feature. He's coming back from a knock. But they're playing Tullerone now next Saturday. TJ was quiet by all accounts, particularly in the first half yesterday, and they're still able to put up a score like that, like a really big double scores win. I tell you something though, Shane, I cannot wait for that Tullerone game. And if you're looking at a game that, you know, I don't think it has been televised, but I think it'd be a classic game to be televised. The last time they played, the last time it was televised, I think Ballyhale won by a point. It was a 214 to 116.
Yeah, wasn't that the day that young Tommy Walsh had a great performance on Colin Fennelly? So we might see that battle again.
Yeah, and like Ballyhale it's like death by 1,000 cuts because they can hurt you everywhere. But Tullerone have like a really strong spine, and they'll quietly fancy themselves. They're like, everybody's going to tip Ballyhale, but Tullerone have been tipping away really, really nicely the last couple of years. This is a huge game, massive game, and the Village await in the final. We kind of teed it up, I'd say, about 4 or 5 weeks ago that they just can go on these runs. I don't know if it's because Brian Cody has come back involved or whatever, or that powwow they had after the Bennett's Bridge game and moving a few players around, moving Keane Kenny to centre back, putting Conor Brown out to midfield, where he was, as Willie Matter says, for when they played the Bridge in the group, I think he was wing forward. Niall Brazel is up centre forward. They had a good win over the Borough without like really lighting it up. Just chatting to a few people down there, a lot of their big players played well, but there was no one outstanding. Like Brazel was good, Brown was good, Kenny was good, Owen Guilfoyle I think got a goal earlier on, but they didn't like light it up. But yet they're back in the county final. Then,
like, is that the thing? The Dixborough were poor, underperformed. I mean, you know, they 118, obviously not like they're not too far off here. They only lost it by a goal, but did they underperform?
Yeah, just from what I heard, I think Killian Buckley had some sort of a hamstring strain. He didn't play. Andy Gaffney was decent, but he had a right good duel with Brian Cody, Dermot Cody, I should say, at the edge of the square. And Bill Sheehan, by all accounts, has been outstanding for Dixborough this year. Like, by far and away, their best player up front, out at centre forward. Be interesting to see if he gets a recall in with Kilkenny. Like, he was coming on in all their games in 2019 and was a real good impact player off the bench before he picked up a hamstring injury coming into the All-Ireland final against Tipperary and didn't feature and hardly featured for Kilkenny since. So it'll be interesting to see what look Derek Ling takes at him. But these kind of city derbies are kind of funny ones. Like, it doesn't really matter who's playing well at a given time. Any of them
form goes out the window.
Well, it does really when these guys are like, there's such close proximity to each other, and let's call it a spade a spade. There'd be a fair bit of disdain between the three clubs. Like, there's no point in saying any different. Didn't Noel Larkin have a right pop at O'Loughlin Gales there a few years ago? I think that in his book he actually had a right. I think he took a good pop with them. There's definitely no love lost between them. But amazing how the Village have turned things around. I have to say, amazing how they've turned it around.
Yeah, they've timed it nicely. Some teams play really, really well in the group stages, and then they don't get it done in the knockout stages. But Ballyhale and maybe James Stephens. Like, it's only a few years ago that James Stephens were neck and neck with Ballyhale all the way to the very, very end.
2 years ago, yeah. Like they played one of the best club games, they're probably nearly of all time, a real high-scoring game. But they did a lot wrong in that game and still probably should have beaten Ballyhale. They were well beaten by them last year, I think. But big thing is, Shane, the Village are in the final now. Ballyhale are not there yet, and they have a fair test to overcome. And if they do beat Tullaroan, they'll be playing 3 weeks in a row, which is another little, just if someone's carrying a knock or anything like that, you just don't know. So, and I definitely wouldn't, we'll preview it on Thursday, but I definitely wouldn't be saying Ballyhale and Tullaroan is a foregone conclusion. No way.
Thomas Sharkey says, Village should have been nowhere near relegation. Makes you feel bad for Lisdowney. But look, they had an awful lot of games to get themselves out of trouble. Unfortunately, ended up there, and great Ballycallan obviously were the better team on the day. You want to read out that comment?
Yeah, just Richard Hogan just says, Dara Corcoran is one to watch. And he just said Village will be dangerous in that final, whoever comes through. The Corcorans are two fine players. And obviously, there was injuries going into that club final last year as well. They had a couple of injuries, and even Darren Mullen. Like, Jesus, when you go down through what Ballyhale have, it is frightening. And I suppose the thing about planning for Ballyhale is sometimes you probably do end up getting lost in how are we going to stop X, how are we going to stop Y, how are we going to stop Z. And you can probably focus too much on that maybe and not enough on yourself. I think there's a couple of matchups you need to get right, and you just need to try and implement your own plan. But I cannot wait to see. And if I'm free at all, I'll definitely go down to Tullaroan and the Shamrocks at the weekend. I think that'd be a belter of a game.
Yeah, it's a game I'd be very interested in seeing also. Do you know, we never actually listened to that Willie Dunphy clip when we were talking about Clough-Ballacolla a little while ago. I think it's worth jumping back to it here. It's just 3 minutes. And by the way, just before we do, a reminder, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. And for today's show on YouTube, get your comment in. If you want to enter the OurGame Coaching Clinic competition, you can win 2 tickets to any coaching clinic of your choice. And if you're looking at the video description, underneath the video on YouTube, you'll see the link to where we have all the different coaching clinics. So we have Moneygall in Tipperary, Tipperary, Offaly border, if you want to look at it that way. We have Naas in Kildare, and we have Father Manning Gales in Longford, and we have another one coming up in the north pretty soon. So we're looking forward to doing that. But here's Willie Dunphy. You were talking to Michael after that brilliant win over Cameras.
That's the kind of the stuff dreams are made of, that type of performance in a county final, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that's what you aim for all year. You know, we were only kind of taking over through the group stages, and we knew there was a big performance coming, and thankfully we got it on the right day, and things went our way today, and it's unbelievable. Yeah, 3 in a row. It's a great feeling.
Just 3 in a row is probably something you could never dream of. Like, Laois is so competitive, like, and geez, you've came with a team there now, and you're only getting better by the looks of things.
Yeah, well, look, we don't look into too much of the 3 in a row thing. We just worry about game on game and winning the championship. And you know, there was full focus on this game here today, and our focus is going to turn on Leinster now, thankfully, and we're going to give that a good battle, because you know we disappointed last year in Croke Park, so it's all to play for now.
Was that a bit of motivation even coming into this year? Just as good as last year was, just the way it maybe finished?
Not really, no. I know the 2 games, the quarter-final and semi-final in Leinster last year, gave us fierce momentum, and the final itself was disappointing, but you know, I think we drew a line on it at the end of the year, and this year was a new year and new challenges ahead.
Talk to me about what Declan has brought to the table. Like, Jesus, you'll be definitely trying to hold on to him anyway.
I don't know what we're going to do to keep him, but you know, he's a shrewd operator. Nothing passes him, nothing phases him. There's no panic. We don't do anything special. We come to train Tuesday, Friday, Sunday mornings. He makes it up as he goes along the trainings, and it's all business with him, but it's enjoyable as well, you know, and he's able to get the most out of every player. Yeah. I think we used 22 or 23 players this year, and every one of them were contributing when they came on or when they started. You know, I don't know what we're going to do to get him back next year, but we're going to have to work hard anyway.
Just talk to me about what it means to win a county title. You've played with Laois for a good while, and representing your county is an unbelievable honour, but to win titles with lads that you've grown up with, and just seeing everyone that, you know, has brought you through the whole way, it must be an unbelievable feeling.
Yeah, it's a different feeling. Yeah, it's totally different. We're a small parish, but we don't know any different other than hurling. we're feeding off the younger supporters, and they're feeding off us. They're living a dream at the moment, and the older supporters as well. They're on a roller coaster. Just to put it into perspective, we lost a few people at the start of the year as well, and these kind of things that drive us on, and we're all thinking of them today.
That's what definitely who Picky mentioned up there. Yeah, like they're the people you do it for, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. Darren is involved, and Picky, Shane, our chairperson Una Mar, they're an unbelievable family, and I'm delighted they can take some solace out of this and make the year a bit easier for them.
Thanks. That's the power of hurling, isn't it? The power of GA, isn't it?
That's what it's all about, yeah. And that's what community is all about. And thankfully, we've a great parish and great community, and we're all rolling in behind each other.
Keep it rolling. Good man. Well done. Thanks, man. Good man. Best luck. Come on.
Yeah, geez, he was definitely, you could feel it there off him. It definitely meant an awful lot to him. But geez, that aside, what really stood out to me? He was saying at one stage that Declan Laffin kind of makes it up as he goes along a little bit. Now, I'm sure it's not quite like that. I'm sure there's lots of structure and game plan and the whole lot, and that he's very meticulous. But there probably is an element to that too, that when he's out on the pitch, that he's like, if he sees something, he feels like, I can be creative with it or whatever.
By all accounts, I put that to Declan because I chatted to Declan after I chatted to Willie, and he didn't exactly dispel that. He said he's quite old school, and I have a piece in the paper later on in the week just about he doesn't. He thinks a lot of coaches in hurling are totally overcomplicating the game. And he likes to keep it. The agricultural was the word we used here the whole time, and it was the word kind of he used as well. He said, "If the long ball is on, we play the long ball, but I don't see the point in going through the lines just because everybody else is doing it. We go through the lines if the situation demands going through the lines. But when we have Picky Marr and Willie Dunphy up front, if the first time ball is on, we will give them a first time ball." And he says it's a great way to open up the pitch and get width in the pitch as well, and keep a lot of players kind of honest as well, because they don't know whether you're going long or whether you're going short or what you're going to do. And I think they mix it really, really well, I have to say. And I think he didn't dispel the notion of not making it up as you go along necessarily, but playing it as you see it, and maybe not over coaching lads, I'd say as well. And that's a big bugbear of mine, is when you see teams that look like they're totally overcoached. They look like they nearly need their hand held to make a decision in a game. And I think it's important to give lads freedom, and just I think hurling is played on instinct a lot of the time, and you instill the right messages to them and how you want to play, but I don't think you bombard them with information. And I think Clough have a lovely, lovely mix there. And Declan's obviously going to be involved with Tip next year as well, with Liam Cattle. And he was kind of saying as well that he feels like he's served a good apprenticeship and he's delighted to get his chance. So going to be interesting to see what he brings to the table there.
Yeah, I definitely was going to bring that up. I think that all bodes pretty well for Tipperary, because, you're going to need a lot of people bringing different stuff to the table, and not everybody looking at the game exactly the same way. Obviously, they will need to have a plan that everyone's feeding into for ultimately the boat to row in the one direction. But coming from different backgrounds and experiences, yeah, that definitely bodes well. Some of the comments in here: Ballyhale, we're still missing Darren Mullen and Brian Cody, says Joe Butler. A Sully 180, playing well in the groups and not turning up in knockout stages is like scoring heavily in darts, but not being able to check out. Score for show, double for dough. Or like in golf, drive for show, putt for dough.
Or like in snooker, like I'm able to play good snookers and create chances for myself, but then when I get in amongst the balls, I'm not usually able to take the opportunity. Do you know what I mean? Actually, great win for the headline everywhere was Ryan's day last night after the British Open. Ryan Day had his biggest day. Probably would have fancied Mark Allen going into the final, but I think Andrew is right there. Like, you have to. It's all grand playing well in the group stage. It's like it's all grand playing well in the league, but ultimately you're judged on your championship performance. You're judged on your knockout displays, and that's what every team is judged upon. And that's when you need to be at your best.
Richard Hogan says Ronan is a serious link player for Ballyhale. Corcoran, obviously, they seem very focused at the minute. Richard Hogan on Ballacolla. Was Mick McAvoy playing yesterday, Michael?
Mick McAvoy was not playing yesterday. No, he was not playing. No, I think he was listed amongst the subs. Program is just a bit away from me here, actually, but. They've probably about 20, 21 players realistically that they can call upon, and even they've a couple of young players that are after coming in even since last year. So I think their squad is even a bit better than it was last year. Be interesting to see whether it's Coola, Bowden, Fianna or Crokes in that Leinster quarter-final is going to be interesting. Particularly, it's going to be interesting if they play Crokes again. Because Crokes, like Jesus, Crokes really underperformed in that game. I don't know if they were caught cold on the night or whatever, but they were totally dominated by Clough that night. So going to be fascinating to see if Clough can go on a run again.
Yeah, and also Conor Heaney says, good win for Palatine yesterday. So we'll be talking about their win over Tinryland a little bit later on. So there was round 5, I should say, of the Galway Senior Hurling Championship over the weekend. Now, at the back of it, we know Loughrea are through, Tommy Larkin, St. Thomas's and Sarsfields. That's directly through to the quarterfinals. The preliminary quarterfinals, we'll see Clarenbridge, Turlockmore, Capitagli, Crowell, Portumna, Ormore Marie, and then one from Ardrahan and Athenry, and one from Liam Mellows and Mike Cullen. So there's obviously a bit of sorting out to be done just yet. To talk about the results from the weekend, then Killimer Daly beat Castlegar 217 to 22 points. Sarsfields off Turlockmore, that's Sarsfields through, as we were saying. St. Thomas's had a 420 to 417 win over Clarenbridge. Now that's some high score and stuff there. Obviously both teams are still going to be involved, whether it's the quarterfinals or preliminary quarterfinals, but I'd say that was a cracking match there. 8:37 scored between the two teams. Tommy Larkins drew with Capitagle 118 to 21. Crockwell 416 to 115 winners over Gort. Athenry 23 points to 16 win over Tina Abbey Donairi. And Portumna had a great win over Liam Mellows 221 to 120. So that's Portumna promoted, I should say, alongside Ardrahan to Senior A. And reports to their demise have been clearly overstated. Under 20s, Declan Loughlin and Martin Toohey, they scored the goals there to secure the win. And finally, Ormore Marie beat Mike Cullen 121 to 117 there. So plenty going on in Galway. Even though plenty of the games didn't have a whole lot riding on them, there's still like some couple of entertaining sounding games going on there.
That was a belter of a game by all accounts between Thomas's and Clarenbridge. I think Thomas's hit 4 goals in the second half to win that game. So that was a repeat of last year's county final. As you say, saw some of the highlights of the Portumna game. They definitely looked like to be regenerating a small bit. Obviously, Joe's not going to go on forever with Portumna, and I can't imagine whenever he does retire. He's getting married, I think, next month. So you always near closer to the retirement tour when you get married. I know that from my personal experience.
But hold on, I hear plenty of people saying that when they get married or have a first child, it actually drags them back down to the field because they want to have an excuse to get a couple of hours away, a couple of evenings a week.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. Yeah, I've heard that as well too.
And I've heard it from both women and men.
I just want rid of him for a couple of hours. Just leave, please, and stop annoying me. But just back to Richard McAvoy or Richard Hogan's question. No, Mick McAvoy was listed at 26 yesterday, but didn't come in or anything like that. So I'd imagine he's on the comeback trail there for Clough. And again, he'd be another good guy if they can get him back.
Yeah, for sure. The Armagh final was also semi-finals run over the weekend. Cagelov, Jarrag 118, Cuchulainn Hurling Club 118, Middletown na Fianna 226, Crave Rua 223, and in the Sligo Hurling Championship, Eastleigh beat Western Gales by 213 to 210. Right, the Cork Football Championship over the weekend, there were semi-finals on. Nemo Rangers saw off Ballincollig. So there was, I think Nemo scored the 5 final points through Luke Connolly, Conor Horgan, Kevin O'Donovan, and Barry Cripps. That just kind of dragged them over the line. They're into a 26 final. Nemo manager Paul O'Donovan said afterwards, I thought in the second half we were magnificent. They only got 3 points. And for us to get 1-9, that was a fantastic return. Our whole energy and fitness level was superb, particularly in the second half. Paul Kerrigan didn't start now. And I suppose what he said about Paul Kerrigan, who's, obviously played plenty of years at this stage, an All-Ireland winner going all the way back to 2010, 35 years of age, turning 36 soon. Now, obviously still offers an awful lot here. So, bringing up the age is just one of these things. That's often the reason. But afterwards, the manager, Paul O'Donovan, he said, we're asking Paul to run 9 and 10K as a middle-aged player. We're asking him to do an awful lot. We prefer to bring him on. He showed his class when he came on. He made a pass to Mark Cronin for free. There's no one else that can do that. We want Paul on the pitch for the whole game, obviously. And he does too, but we have to be realistic as well. Now, he says the man is 37. Now, maybe Wikipedia can't be relied upon, but he said that's not to say he won't start the next day. That's the way it is. I have great confidence in him. When he came on, he settled the team down naturally enough. Everyone wants to start. I still want to play. But there is that thing, whether it's club or county, you do need players on the pitch that you really trust and moving well towards the end of the game. In some ways, you want to start all your experienced men too, or at least a good blend of them. But you don't want everyone tiring out and then bringing on guys who haven't been there and done it before towards the last 10 or 15 minutes of the game when things are getting hairy and the right decision has to be made.
Yeah, well, Paul Kerrigan is so battle hardened. He's so cute when it comes to that 15 or 20 minutes. When the SH1T is hitting the fan, and you really need, I thought I nearly went full Anthony Daly there, like, but, with the hands going and the eyebrows going up and down. But you need a guy like that who's gonna mind possession with his life at the end of a game, but can also see a pass that needs to be made to a Luke Connolly or whoever at the end of a game. I think it's good management of a player. Football, sometimes you need maybe a younger body to be able to get up and down, do all that really hard work. And then Jim Gavin always called them the finishers. They weren't the subs, they were the finishers. And if you can get players to buy into that role as well, it's huge. Some will, some won't. But if you can get them to buy into it, like I'd say Kevin McMenamin totally bought into it. Owen O'Gara totally bought into it. And I don't think Paul Kerrigan will give a hoot whether he's starting or coming on, as long as he has another Cork medal in his back pocket in a fortnight's time.
Yeah, with a bit like Willie Hyland, maybe he'll end up starting for the county final. St. Finbarrs beat Castlehaven, so they went to penalties the last couple of years, both sides getting a victory in either year. But it was 217 to 116 this time. Stephen Sherlock with a goal, Brian Hayes, who's obviously been mentioned earlier as a bit of a dual player, they both got the goals. Teams were level on 12 occasions, but manager Paul O'Keefe said it gets easier and easier. We haven't beaten Nemo that often in finals. Their record is frightening. It's their centenary year, so they'll probably have a bit of added pressure. We haven't had a bad record in the last couple of years either. It'll be a good game of football, and it'll be an advertisement for Cork football. It'll be pretty similar today, and I'd be more than happy if we had the same result. I mean, St. Finbarrs really are, like we saw last year, getting all the way to an All-Ireland semi-final and getting to extra time as well. They're a serious team, and they probably feel they're not far off pushing all the way to an All-Ireland. Obviously, it's not going to be easy against Nemo in the next game. But if they do get through that, that'll probably make them feel like, just we're released now and we can kick on and give it a big push for the All-Ireland.
100%, yeah. They were quite close last year, you'd have to say. They have some riches when someone like Ben O'Connor doesn't start a big game like this. Like we talked about, like he's nearly the prototype modern hurler / footballer. He's built perfectly. He's athletic. He's fast. He's fit. He's strong, and he's got all the skills in both codes. But that's the talent they have available to them, that they can leave a player like that or keep him in reserve and bring him in towards the end of a game. Again, that's not to say, like Kerrigan, that he mightn't start the county final. Funny, in the Ballincollig Nemo game, Ballincollig didn't opt to go negative, maybe like other teams have against Nemo, and got joy out of that or whatever. And then you look at Castlehaven, and the Bars was quite an open game, by all accounts, as it has been for the last couple of years. But yeah, big couple of weeks for the Bars. Like I think the manager said there, it's like the good old days. It's like the 80s. And listen, wanna be great, but if they were able to do the two, it would be unbelievable. Like really would. Like
Conor Heaney says Bars are All-Ireland contenders in football, at least. It was a great game against Haven. Let's see. Experienced finishers when things get tight can be invaluable, says Richard Hogan. Absolutely. Quick ball, always create goals, chances. Cash in my that's Cash is king. Cash is king. Ball can always be broken, and then anything can happen. It can, yeah, but I suppose, like we're always saying here, it has to be part of a varied game plan, because if you are playing against a team and the half-back gets the ball and you don't have to worry about a short ball to the half-forward, you're almost turning and sprinting back and trying to be there first for that break, before the ball is even struck. So it has to be part of a little bit of a varied game plan.
It must be unpredictable as well. A team can't expect it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I remember there was probably a while, even for Tip, where when Paddy Matter got the ball, a lot of teams knew he was going to go along with it, and they were nearly retreating back the pitch when he got the ball. Then Paddy started varying his game, and he was real hard to predict what he was going to do, and he was just such an effective weapon like that. Just a quick comment there, Shane, from Patrick Rochford, just on the Erling Haaland GA equivalent. David Clifford has to stand out as the obvious comparator. Front man, huge specimen, scoring for fun. Like, Haaland is what, 22? What's Shearer's Premier League record? Is it 260 or 280?
I think it's 260. Yeah, he might have it beaten by this time next year.
If he had, what are we looking at? If he'd 6 to 7 really good seasons, he could get there before he's 30. Like, you obviously don't know, but remember, like, I don't follow soccer that closely, but I think it was after the Community Shield did he miss a couple of chances, and people were like, will Haaland fit in the Premier League? Is he that good of a finisher? And then you look at what he's after doing since.
Is it 14 goals he has? And Darwin Núñez did score a goal in that Community Shield final, and sure, he stank the joint out of it. He's not even getting started at the moment. But look, we'll talk other sports another day. The Dublin Football Championship, I watched both of these semi-finals over the weekend. We already said it, Crokes and Fianna, they're both chasing a double. Fianna beat Ballyboden 114 to 17, or to 7 points, I should say. So they won that quite handsomely by 10 in the end. And Kilmacud Crokes, 12 points to 1-3 win over Thomas Davis. So I don't know, did you get a chance to watch either of these games? You were down in Laois yesterday, so I'm sure you didn't see the Crokes game. Maybe you didn't see the Boden and Fianna game either.
No, didn't see enough of this. Not enough of these games at all. Just a few brief little clips. But I did see you tweeting about Shane Walsh. I kind of thought after looking at the Coola game, like a lot of things went wrong for him. He got a lot of specialist attention as well. I'd say the same night. Didn't sound like it was like that yesterday. It sounds like he was literally the puppet master from start to finish. What type of role was he playing without Mannion? Is he more withdrawn? Is he playmaking? What exactly is he doing?
Yeah, well, Johnny Appleseed asked how many did he score. He scored 8, and 6 of those were from placed balls, including 145. So, do you know there was times in the game when he was the deepest lying Kilmacud Crokes player? So what I found very interesting is how quickly he seems to have settled in and as part of the group. And I chatted to full forward Darren Mullen a little bit about this afterwards, and he said, yeah, he's really part of the group already. He's meeting up with the boys, when I suppose the team has a breakfast or whatever after training, maybe a Saturday morning or something like that. He's really fitting into the group well.
You're really showing yourself to be a dub. I tell you, there's no other club teams in the country, I'd say, that are going for breakfast outside of the Dublin boys going to a cafe for a latte or a skinny latte or mocha latte or something like that. You've really shown you've shown your true colours now.
You have a latte?
With oat milk in it rather than normal milk, because the normal milk's not good enough for you.
Oh, will you go air that? No, but this surely happens across the country. Just because you obviously don't have cafes in Burr, and all you have is you go down to the farm and just hope to get a cup of oxtail soup off somebody.
Unpasteurized, unhomogenized milk is good stuff, I'll tell you that.
Oh, I'd say it's still warm when you get the milk straight out of the cow. No, but like he said, he's really settled in and he's part of the group and all that kind of stuff, which is brilliant and what you want, because you don't want to just plug a player in and say, hey, be brilliant for us. You want him to be one of the boys as well. So obviously it seems that that's happening, which is great for him. But Shane Cunningham, by the way, came in with Mannion not there. He came in and he's obviously played some huge games from before. He was really good here. He scored just a point, but he was very good. A lot of other lads pitched in with a single point each. But Shane Walsh, he was kind of wearing number 15, but he was dropping out towards midfield and probing out there, because he knows that if he just stands inside and full forward all the time, he's just going to get pucked around the place, really, isn't he? He's going to have somebody sitting in his shorts. So at times when Crokes were pressing up the field on Thomas Davis and kind of squeezing the life out of them, what he'd do is withdraw and almost be the most deep-lying player in the entire team. This happened in the second half, especially when Thomas Davis needed to chase the game. They'd pass the ball backwards between the likes of Rory O'Carroll and maybe Shane Walsh, and then he'd make a burst through. Because he wasn't followed, there was no point in somebody man-marking him on his own 65. So he was able to get the ball with a little bit more space, slowly work his way up the field, try and find pockets of space. And now and again, he'd get 1v1 with somebody inside the 65. He'd burn them and he'd get a score for himself or win a free or something like that. But it was the way that he was directing traffic. I could hear him talking to the other players on the pitch saying, get out this side, get out that side, move, get out of that space, whatever it might be. And he was really good at doing it, and you could see the players were responding to him. I suppose he has that aura to him as a very seasoned county player. But yeah, I was quite impressed with him. He scored one left-footed one from play from the 45 at one stage, and it was excellent. And to be fair, Thomas Davis started really well here. They scored 1-1 early on. Fionn Murray buried a lovely goal. But from then on, it was 8 points in a row for Crokes. Thomas Davis were chasing the game. There was a red card for Ryan Deegan in the 52nd minute, second yellow. And look, 12 points to 1-3, it kind of tells you the story. Just Thomas Davis had a perfect start, but just 2 points for the rest of the game. There was only one team in it, really.
Yeah, listen, it's a very 1-3 over 60-something minutes is very poor tally. But you are coming up again. Crokes are not amaze me, but you do love watching them in the sense how they can squeeze you and strangle you. And just
they did it to Coola as well, didn't they?
Totally. What did Coola score in the second half, Shane? 1-2, 1-3 maybe?
Yeah, couldn't get the ball up to Con either. Niall O'Callaghan got that goal, but they just couldn't get the ball up to Con.
Yeah, and they're just so experienced at that. you kind of always, if they're in a game, even a couple of points down with 10 or 15 minutes to go, you kind of just think they'll squeeze you out of it. And they've got to that stage now where they're so experienced and so calm and cool under pressure. And they really just squeeze Thomas Davis out of this by all accounts from what I'm hearing. And to be able to do that, again, without Mannion, just the idea of Walsh coming into this team, and as you say, seamlessly, seemingly anyway, just falling into the team, falling into the style and process of the way that the team plays is hugely impressive, you'd have to say. And listen, they're going to be very, very hard stopped in the final. Be interesting to see what Na Fianna do. Like if Shane Walsh is coming out, if anything, he's harder to defend from out the pitch in a way. You could maybe sit Johnny Cooper in front of him if he's playing inside or something like that. But if he's out the pitch, like they have a lot of players that, like Darren Mullins, a really fine player. I know you said you were chatting to him after the game. Like I rate him very, very highly, I have to say. And they have a lot of guys that can hurt you. So going to be interesting to see what Na Fianna do to stop Walsh in particular.
Yeah, and just even a little bit more about Crokes. The way they organised for the kickouts when Thomas Davis were trying to get the ball up the field and just couldn't, you could see there was great communication going on between Craig Diaz, who was really good all game, Rory O'Carroll, like the wing forwards, like Tom Fox. They're just a really well-oiled machine, so you have to give Robbie Brennan, the manager, a lot of credit there. Hugh Kenny took an awful dunt at one stage. He had a bloodied nose on the sideline. And he's trying to patch himself up, and, he had to change the jersey because he had the blood streaming out of his nose. He had a couple of bits of cotton wool going up there. He was trying to put the Vaseline on to try and seal in the blood or whatever. And, it can be difficult to do it. So he's there, somebody on the sideline gave him their phone. So he has the selfie camera on while he's trying to put Vaseline on his nose. So needs must.
Needs must, yeah. That's it's not something you predict or think you'll be doing during a game or anything like that, really. Commenting here from ML89, and I don't necessarily disagree now, but honest with you, none of the Dublin club teams have been anyway exciting to watch since Vincent's were in their peak. Last year's Club All-Ireland final had an exciting finish, but was an awful watch. It's funny, I think the finale of a game can often mask what came before. Like it was probably a tough watch. What was I going to say? Like Crokes and Coola was very, very good. But again, you knew probably with 10 minutes to go what way it was going.
Whitehall and Na Fianna, I thought was good. It was very exciting at the end as well. Like it was a tight game throughout.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. They're probably not as free-flowing games as it may be in a lot of other counties. But again, like free-flowing style of football, it only gets you so far. I think Crokes could probably do it anyway if they wanted to. But the way they play now makes them so hard to beat. They conceded 1-3 yesterday. They conceded, 1-8 or 1-9 against Coola. They're low scores generally to be conceding, and they have lots of artillery up front. It mightn't be unbelievable on the eye, but I think there's a deep-rooted there's nearly a deep-rooted respect now when they're watching Crokes that they've made themselves so difficult to play against, and that they're so good at seeing out a game and just squeezing every ounce of oxygen out of you coming down that home straight.
Yeah, I mean, I just think they're a really impressive team, and I know you do too. So talk about the other semi-final, Na Fianna. They're in their first final since 2005. Haven't won it since 2001, back in the era of Kieran McGeeney and Jason Sherlock and so on and so forth. So obviously a glorious team back then. But Na Fianna were really impressive here. David Lacey hit 1-3. Conor McHugh scored 5. 2 of those were frees. Glenn O'Reilly scored 2. David O'Hanlon, the goalkeeper, scored 2. Paddy Quinn and Ali Fitzgerald, who was man of the match in their quarter-final win over Whitehall Columkill, they got a point each. There were 8 points one up early in the game. I think it was 10-1 at half-time, and Bowden had just scored that point in injury time. Imagine that they just scored that first point in injury time the first half. A team that won Leinster just a couple of years ago, that was a Collie Baskel free. Now, Ryan Baskel wasn't playing. He's been injured, so obviously that's a bit of a blow to them. But I wonder, like, Michael Darmacawley, I don't think he played at all last year, but he was back in the team. It was the first time he started this year in Championship. James Madden, who has been down in the AFL, he was brought back in and started. And I thought they just looked a little bit disjointed. And I'm not just, singling out either of those two fine players, but it did seem like they weren't cohesive at all. And James Madden, he had a couple of point chances early in the second half and he put them both wide. Didn't really get into the game. Maybe it would have, if the game had kind of been a little bit tighter and it started to open up the last 20, 25 minutes and you brought in the AFL athlete then, maybe then he could just burst through in the space and whatever. But I just don't know if whether it's cohesive because you're plugging 2 players in and hoping that it'll work, and maybe it just didn't. But very few players stood out from across the board, so it's obviously not just down to the 2 of those, but it maybe was a small factor.
It's something you wouldn't say about Bowden and either coach generally over the last decade, that they weren't cohesive and that they were a bit all over the place. It's definitely not something you would say. Usually with Bowden, you have a fair idea. Yeah, it's like it's Ronsi, and like they do exactly what it says on the tin. Like you know what you're going to get exactly from them nearly every day. So that was a surprise. Like I was amazed going down through the running commentary on this game and just to see how the game got away from them as quickly as it did, because it's very unlike Bowden, shall we say. They usually produce a standard that will make them very, very hard to beat, but they totally underperformed here. And maybe, as you say, Shane, it's to do with kind of guys coming in and guys coming out, and maybe guys that hadn't been around the setup maybe at stages this year coming in to play in a big game like this and just looked a bit disjointed maybe as a result.
Yeah, the Donegal final, that's now confirmed at St. Eunan's against Naomh Conaill. Eunan's beat Kilcar by 113 to 111. We know this game had been delayed by a week due to bereavement, but Rory Kavanagh, he's over St. Eunan's and he's fairly tight-lipped on the Donegal job, but you're very much expecting him to be named as the manager, aren't you?
There's a couple of quotes from him here. I'll just fly through them here really quickly. He said, "I'm just concentrating on St. Eunan's now until our season is finished. We have a big job ahead of us now next week, so that's where my full focus lies. I'm going to put the full focus here now. That's the way it's going to be, and that's where my head is at, and that's where it continues to be." I'd say he's 99.99999 recurring chance of being the next Donegal manager. Hey,
do you think he's focusing on Eunan's at the moment, though?
Who knows? Listen, the optics of it looks like, as I said to you last week, it looks like, the wait for Donegal's next manager is going on. What are they at? They're a Division 1 team. They clearly have their manager by the looks of things. They clearly have their man. He's doing, I'm sure, behind the scenes, he has probably a backroom team assembled. It's just a case of it would be disrespectful to Eunan's. It would be disrespectful to Kavanagh if it came out now and it looks like he's in any way double jobbing or their focus is in any way off the club. So listen, I'd be amazed if he's not the next Donegal manager.
Do you remember was it the Euros last year when your man Lopetegui was announced as the next Real Madrid manager on the eve of the World Cup, and he ended up getting the boot as the manager of the Spain team, and
that's right.
The Euros didn't go well for them. But these things can unsettle camps a little bit, but I don't know if it would really. I don't know if the boys in Eunan's would be all that concerned or put out if they knew that he was going to take over as the next Donegal boss. But one thing I would be concerned about is if he's not the manager and it's not already sorted and they don't have their manager sorted, you would be getting a bit concerned as a Donegal supporter.
Oh, you would definitely, because it's coming to the county final time, and if they don't have a manager at this stage, then you're bringing in a manager cold who potentially hasn't seen all the action up close and personal. Like I was reading something, there's an interview with Niall Crew yesterday in the Daily Mail, and he was just talking about how people think that this is a quiet time of the year for an inter-county manager, and he says like minimum 12 hours he's spending Saturdays and Sundays going to Carlow games, coming up and down the road or whatever. So it's not, listen, it's a quieter time in the sense that there's less pressure. You're just kind of scouting players or whatever at the moment. But a county manager needs to see, like if you were going in as a manager in the morning in a team, the first thing you do is you want to do your research. You want to do your due diligence. You want to see what you have to work with. You're not taking someone else's word for it. You want to see it with your own eyes, these players. And you might see something in a cornerback for an intermediate team where you think this lad has all the attributes potentially to play a county, and nobody else sees it. So you want to have an insight into what you're going to be working with, and you want to hold your hands up and be confident with what you're calling in. So listen, I assume Rory Kavanagh is going to be the next Donegal manager, and if he does it on the back of back-to-back titles with St. Eunan's, all the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a reminder, brought to you by OurGame. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. Also, we do have a competition running today on the YouTube video version of this video. Go and put in the best comment will end up winning 2 tickets for a coaching clinic of your choice. Underneath the YouTube video, you'll see in the description a link to the shows that we've got going. So click on that universe.com/whatever link and you'll be able to go and have a look at the ones that we've got going. In Down, it was some drama there, wasn't it? Do you want to go through it?
I think you probably know a bit more about it than me, because I know you did a bit of research on this, but this is fascinating. Like, it just amazes me what can happen even with a penalty shootout. Is dramatic enough, but what potentially can happen during a penalty shootout and what happened here. I can't think of anything like this happening. Not offhand anyway. It's obviously been times in soccer games where keepers have had to go off with injuries or been sent off and an outfield player has gone in, but this is a good one now.
Yeah, because like it's 3 penalty shootouts in the space of a week in Down, in less than a week in Down, or just about a week in Down. 2 quarterfinals and now a semi-final. So Warrenpoint and Lough Island, they played last night. Warrenpoint won 8-7 on penalties. And I think the best way to sum it up is read out a bit of Sean Mahoney's article in the Irish News. This is kind of jumping a few paragraphs in, but he goes, Warrenpoint goalkeeper Gary McMahon, the hero of the quarterfinal shootout victory over Byrne, put his shoulder out, saving Stephen Mason's first penalty after clattering the post.
I just ask you, how did he clatter the post? Like, that's a fair effort for a keeper to clatter the post, making a save, because he obviously got right up in there. If the ball was going into the corner, it doesn't happen. It might happen in normal play, but not during a penalty normally. So he definitely put his body on the line.
Yeah, and he said that meant John Boyle, who had scored the first spot kick, had to go on goals. A decision vindicated after he saved from Dean McLaughlin. There were 22 penalties in all, with Lough Island's Rory Mason hitting the post to send Warrenpoint through. John Boyle, Alan Davison and Owen Burns scored spot kicks, while Rory Mason scored 1 out of 3 for Lough Island, and Paddy Kenny, Dean McLaughlin, Stephen Mason and Dean McClements were also on target. It's Warrenpoint's second time in a county final since 2019, when they lost by a point to Kilcoo. Boss Shane Mulholland was delighted to win, and he backed his decision to use John Boyle and not sub-goalkeeper Ryan Hockey in goals for the penalties after McMahon's injury. And he said, my heart was jumping through my chest, and in those moments when you're standing on your own, you're saying wee prayers and thinking about help from above, we made the decision to go with John. They had to ring Croke Park because this hadn't happened before. The elation of winning now switches to who is injured and what we're going to be like in a couple of weeks.
So you're telling me that they rang Croke Park in the middle of the penalty shootout by the looks of things, which is not something like that happens in 30 seconds or anything either.
Well, that's what I'm also wondering, because obviously they must have had a couple of minutes to tend with the goalkeeper who had been injured.
Yeah.
And like, how quickly do you realize, okay, can we just throw an outfielder in goals here? And, because in Gaelic football penalty shootouts, you nominate the 5 players and those 5 players will go again if it goes to sudden death. So is it the same thing with penalties? You have a nominated goalkeeper who then replaces that goalkeeper. So maybe it was a case even where somebody in the Down County board had to quickly get onto Croke Park just to see what are the rules in these situations. So it's all a bit mad, isn't it, really? If that happened on the fly, if anyone was there and knows that bit more about it, we probably just haven't had enough time to research this one before we came in, but that's why we're relying on Sean's article. But it's so interesting.
I said it to you before. I think if I'm ever over a team, I will know the GA rulebook inside out, because knowledge of all these rules and what you can and can't do. I know I had to ring Croke Park or whatever, but knowledge is definitely power in this instance. Like, there's certain rules even that inter-county managers will probably admit and players will admit that they're not sure of. But there's so many permutations, particularly when it goes to extra time and black cards and yellow cards carrying over, and whether players come back into the game and whether a sent-off player can come back in or he can just be replaced, and how many subs you can use here and there. So knowledge is definitely power. But how dramatic has the Down Championship been in the last week? It's been absolutely nuts. And I'd love to, if there's anybody that was at any of those games at the weekend, it was high drama.
Yeah, and Kilcoo will meet them in the final. They had a 1-9 to 4 points win over Mayo Bridge, 11th consecutive final for Kilcoo. But if Warrenpoint managed to do it with the way their season has been going, it'll be a pretty famous one. But they're up against the All-Ireland champions. In Tipperary, Clonmel Commercials beat their near rivals Moyle Rovers 115-9, and Upperchurch Drumban saw off county champions Lockmore Castleiney 111-112. So that means Lockmore have been dethroned on both sides of the coin at this stage. But of course, injuries certainly didn't help them this year. Upperchurch coach Owen Short got the better of his cousin Noel McGrath. So that's a very interesting part of it. Like last week, the McGraths were up against their drum cousins as well, the Campions and the McGraths. So it's nearly a family occasion every week for them at this stage. Then also in the relegation decider in Tipperary, you might read this out as I get the video going on the screen.
I surely will, yeah. So in the relegation, it was finished Care 1-8, Aherlow 8 points. So there was a dramatic penalty save by Aaron Wall with the last kick of the game. Denied the game going into extra time.
The music.
You can just see the keeper being carried away like that with his arms like that. But the picture is a bit obscured. But the one thing you can see is that the ball is going in top left hand corner. Like
Top corner.
It's an outrageous save. Again, when the game was, this was win or lose the game or go to extra time, it was an outrageous save.
Can I throw this at you? Right. So in that instance there, the Aherlow player, and I wish F and Eddie was commentating on this one, but he's blasted it to the top corner. But interestingly, twice this weekend, I've seen players that have rolled the ball into the back of the net in penalty situations. So one was it Gowna or Crosherlock that actually had the penalty? I can't remember off the top of my head. But one was in that match that was on RTE2 on Saturday night. And then I was at the Division 2 semi-final in Dublin yesterday before the Kilmacud game. And Alex Wright, the centre forward for St. Sylvester's, he sent the keeper one way and rolled it the other way. Like in the past, GA was all about just absolutely lift that ball out of it and hope it gets to the back of the net.
Yeah, things have changed a bit. Too many boys watching feckin' soccer, I'd say, to be honest with you.
Well, I think it's because they've moved the ball closer. Because previously 14 yards out as a goalie, you're like, I have a fair bit of time here. It's actually smaller than the soccer goals, so it doesn't pay for me to go early. Whereas now moving that bit closer, you probably do have to guess the direction at times.
Oh, I still wouldn't guess it. I think it's criminal to leave an open net. Like, I put it this way. I don't think Gaelic footballers are that proficient at penalty takers that you need to guess where the ball is going. I think you eyeball them. And when the ball is kicked, you go like they're all like, particularly like senior club keepers and obviously intercounty keepers. Definitely, like their reflexes are very, very good. That's one of the reasons why they're there, as well as being able to kick out the ball. So I just think you don't leave the chance of an open net. I think you wait for him to kick it and you try and read where he's going. Did you watch the Ireland under-21s during the week against who were they playing again? Israel. The Israel keeper kept going behind the goals, looking at his notes as to where the Irish players were going to put the penalties. I know you were actually in the Aviva the other night, and he got spot on so many times. And I think I said it to you before, there's very few times, particularly with amateur players, like that they go back across their body. If they're a right footer, they tend to go to the open side. If they're a left footer, they tend to go to the open side, which is the left side. Going back across their body is a lot more difficult, I'd say. And like, I think what penalty shootout were we looking at where like 9 of the 10 penalties or something went to what was the open side, like the right footed, they went to the right side. So like I think it's 60-40 before a man steps up that you have an idea of where he's going to go. And if they're that good that they're able to put it to the other side and you react a bit slower and it goes in, I kind of say fair play, because the penalty takers aren't that good in the GA.
And speaking of a penalty that for Man United, obviously they'd already been hammered by City, but what a penalty he knocked in. That was unbelievable. Shall we talk a little bit of Carlow? Palatine beat Tinryland. You might tell us who did the score.
I surely would. Yeah, lost you there for a second, Shane. You might just check your connection there. So it finished Palatine 2-8, Tinryland 2-6. Jamie Kenny and Tomas Sheehan with the goals for Palatine. Shane O'Neill and Conor Crowley hit 3 each, 2 from play. Kieran Moore and Joshua Egan a point each. I think importantly for Tinryland, they weren't able to get Paul Broderick onto the score sheet. Dermot Walsh was the top scorer for them. He hit 1-5. All the points were from place balls. The goal was from play. Shane Redmond was the other to get a goal. But a big win for Palatine. I think we had a Palatine viewer earlier that dropped in a comment as well. So they're obviously enjoying things there this morning. Leitrim is at the semi-final stage as well. And it finished St. Mary's and Fianna 12 points each, and another penalty shootout drama. St. Mary's won 5-4 on penalties, and they will play Mohill in the final. Mohill beat Leitrim Gales 2-10 to 1-10. So it's St. Mary's. I think Tour de Strand is St. Mary's Tour de Strand. I could be wrong. That's Eamon O'Hara's home club. So he's managing Mohill now. So he's up against another St. Mary's there in the county final. That'll be an interesting one. Last year's county final was obviously an epic. It was on TG Carter, live televised game. It was a brilliant game. And the Leitrim Senior Football Championship relegation game, Drumahare survived by the skin of their teeth, 2-11 to Melvin Gales is 2-10. We fly through the Cavan Championship as well. This is a brilliant game on TV the other night. Finished Gown at 2-12, Cross the Lock 2-11. Absolute cracker of a game. And I think I saw a couple of Cavan folk commenting that, RTE and TG Carter often put some of the higher profile counties, shall we say, they put their club championships on, but anytime Cavan has been on, it's never disappointed. Oisin Pearson held his nerve at the end in injury time to send over a free. It's actually a really tough free, and he bought a couple of yards into the middle by playing a short ball. They kind of bought a bit of a free, and it made it much more advantageous. The ball barely dropped over, but that sends Gowna through. So Gowna, it was funny, Mickey Graham and Keane Mackey were doing commentary for RTE on the sideline, and they're both involved with Mullinyochta this weekend in the Longford final. Mickey's an advisor, I think, and Keane is playing, having formerly played with Castlerahan, and their half parish is Gowna. So Gowna are in the Cavan final a week after, which is going to be fascinating. But this was a really good game. Gowna are going to play Killygarry in the final. They beat the reigning champions, Rammer United, 2-7 to 1-9. So Killygarry reached their first Cavan final in 51 years. The goals are from Connor Smith and Matty McKenna. It's kind of like Shinrone as well. Every weekend we're throwing up some club getting to a county final for the first time in ages, and you could hear the emotion in Willie Dunphy's voice when you talk about what it means, what a club means to the community. And Killygarry will be going absolutely mad over the next couple of weeks, building up for that. It's hard to describe or to just put a description on what it actually means within those areas. And people can say maybe the games will never get the national attention, or the national audience will never, focus in on a county final as much. But I don't really think that matters. Within that county, and particularly within the focus 2 areas they're playing the county final, that is literally their world for the weeks leading up to a final. And the nervousness going in around that occasion, it's fantastic, and just to see what it means to everyone involved.
Yeah, in Meath there was a couple of relatively one-sided semi-finals.
I think you might be muted there, Shane, at the moment. There it's all picture, no sound coming through. I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. I won't lie, because it's hard to shut you up at the best of times. But I might just stay.
Now they're saying you're gone, Verney. I think the problem is you and not me, because I think they can still hear me. Folks, can you still hear me out there?
Yeah, I think I might have been muted there.
And you're blaming me.
I couldn't hear you at all anyway there. But listen, it's probably no harm. Maybe the viewers just wanted a break for a couple of minutes. But just on Monaghan there, I'll fly through it quickly. So it's going to be Ballybay Pierces against the reigning champion Scottstown. Ballybay had a 118 to 12 points win over Clough-Ballacolla. As I was saying there, or I don't know if anybody heard, Vinnie Corey, the Monaghan manager, was playing centre back for Clough-Ballacolla, which is, I just find it fascinating that he's playing against lads that he's going to be like. There's no point in saying any different. You're centre back. Vinnie was a bit of an enforcer as well. He's going to be talking on the pitch. He's going to be delivering a few slaps on the pitch as well, and then he's going to be managing those guys in a while. It's just that I think it's a.
But Conor Laverty's the same in Down, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, and just on Kilcoo, Kilcoo look like they're coming again when it matters most. Like, they were struggling earlier on. They're beaten comprehensively in that league final, lucky to survive on penalties, and they were back to their comprehensive selves, I'd say, the other day. And in Monaghan, obviously, that's going to be a really interesting final. Scottstown against Ballybay. That lot be on a couple of weeks as well. You might fly through Sligo there, Shane, where there was even more penalty drama. It seems there must have been a penalty shootout in nearly every county in the country this weekend.
Yeah, St Mary's beat Drumliff Ross's Point, and it's like 3-1 on penalties after 217 to 120. Turlestrane beat Shamrock Gales 113 to 111. So that'll be Turlestrane against St Mary's. I don't think it's St Mary's Turlestrane.
No, I was wrong. No, I was wrong. Yeah, I was talking gibberish, which happens from time to time.
Yeah, we might mute you again. In the relegation final, Curry beat Coolani Mulnabrina. In Mayo, then, Westport beat Gary Moore 13 points to 11. I think Westport went down to 13 men, but still managed to see this one out. Castlebar had just that little bit too much for Knockmore, 12 points to 11, so that's a huge result there. Ballintubber beat Brayfeed, that's 2-11 to 14 points. And Ballina had it pretty easily against Clare Morris, 4-13 to 7. In relegation, Balladreen 6-8, Davits 2-8. Andy Moore with 3-3 in his final game for Balladreen. And I don't know if you saw the last goal in particular, a beauty into the top corner. Then Balla beat the Nail 2-10 to 1-8.
Just on Andy Moran, Shane. Andy Moran is the best player in either hurling or football that I've ever seen to decelerate. He decelerates so fast that the defender, he's running full whack, then he decelerates really quick, and the defender has overcommitted himself a lot of the time. I think it happened for either second or third goal. He's so good at it. It's obvious. It was great to see, even since he finished up with Mayo, that I think he really wanted to give a good few years with Balladreen, and obviously he's kind of mixing inter-county duties. Like, he would have been trying to see all the Leitrim games at the weekend while still trying to play. He's still in really good nick as well. But he goes out like you don't want to go out having been relegated. So they'd be delighted to have stayed up. And all focus on the Leitrim job now. And realistically, you're looking at a future Mayo manager, I'd imagine, in the next 5 or 6 years as well, I'd say.
Yeah, in Clare in the quarterfinals, Kilmurray Bricken beat Cratloe 3-13 to 113, and then Stymon off St. Breckens. Corofin beat Lissacasey 119 to 16. Éire Óg off Clondegad 211 to 11 points, and Milltown St. Joseph 415 Kilmahill 5-6. Geez, that was a goal fest there in the relegation playoff. Let's see, what else have we to touch on here? In Derry quarterfinals, Lavey beat Ballinderry. Schlockmeal had 10 points to spare over Swatra. Sean O'Leary's Newbridge 114 Dungiven 4, and Glen had too much for O'Donovan Rossa 114 to 11. In Fermanagh quarterfinals, Enniskillen and Gales beat Ballinalek Art McMurrows, and Ern Gales Bleak 115 Rosslea Shamrocks 8. In Kildare, this was the intermediate football championship. Ballyteague 213 and Castledermot 112. By the way, actually, when we were mentioning who was the Erling Haaland of the GAA, I did get shared this tweet. I'm just going to bring it up here. It's from the Days Since Kildare one, Sam. Jimmy Haaland. So Jimmy Highland there. So that's not a bad one.
I like it. I like it now. That's been very creative. Now, Jimmy's on the other end of the scale to Erling now, to be fair. Jimmy is, if we were picking the best diminutive player in the GA, I'd say Jimmy would probably be it. He's a little powerhouse. He must only be about 5'7" or 5'8", but he's so hard to handle. He was brilliant this year for Kildare. Okay, in Limerick, the quarterfinals, Father Casey's big Kildimo Palace Kenry. So that's their double hopes ended. Kildimo Palace Kenry. Monaleen beat St. Kieran's, and Ballylanders had just too much for Galbally, but not until after extra time. In Louth, in the relegation final, Dundalk Gales beat Mattock Rangers by a point. In Roscommon quarterfinals, St. Bridget's 212, Clonagale 112. Roscommon Gales knocked out Porrick Pierce's, the champions, 111 to 15. Strokestown beat Oran, and Boyle had just 5 points to spare over Michael Glavies. Do you want to go through Waterford and Wexford? Just even, Shane, like, there's some big hitters gone. Like, last year's Connacht final was Pierce's and Knockmore. Both are gone, and both are gone at the quarterfinal stages with inter-county. So there's an opening there for there's an opening for any of those counties realistically to give it a good shot. Even like Ballinamore were good last year in Connacht, so the Leitrim champions might fancy their chance in there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see who comes out of Galway, obviously, and whether who can kind of bounce back there. It's probably been open the last couple of years after the Corofin monopoly, so it'll be fascinating to see who comes out there. Where are we? Just fly through Waterford. Kilrosanti 210, St. Saviour's 8 points, Portlaw 116, Kilmacthomas 17, Clashmore Kinsale Beg 512, Bricky Rangers 116, Tide de Burke is obviously Clashmore Kinsale Beg, Stradbally 39 on Reen, I should say 113, and I believe the Great Brick is still going. I've seen him listed at number 14 for Stradbally. Absolutely no end to that, man. Preliminary quarter-final draw, Portlaw against St. Saviour's, Clashmore against Kilmacthomas, Stradbally against Bricky Rangers, and Kilrosanti against Onreen. Wexford quarter-final stages, Shelmaliers, comprehensive win, 3-11 to 5 points against Starlights. St Anne's, Rotangan 14 points, Glenbarntown 2-7, St James's 2-10, Gustaran O'Reilly's 1-10, St James's Matt O'Hannon's club, and Castletown had a big win over Killenairn, 3-15 to 7 points. Don't know if you saw on Friday night was the first time they probably put out the footage of it, of the new initiative in Wexford where they shake hands with the referee at the start of a game. What, like, you know, like in Crow Park before some of the big games, they would do that thing where they shake hands with their opponents. I don't even really like that because I think it's a bit fake and kind of phony. What do you think? Like shaking hands with a referee, does it mean anything at the start of a game?
The handshake, the give respect, get respect handshake.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's probably no harm. Maybe it's a little bit of window dressing or whatever. So we have it playing up there.
And I suppose it's a good thing.
There's part of me that I don't want to naysay because obviously they're trying to do something that to improve things. But to me, it's it needs to be more stuff. Like I said, like the GoPro, like making people face charges, you know, one and you're done, zero tolerance for abuse of referees and just people in general. Just cop on when you're dealing with referees. Like you see these people talking out both sides of their mouths, we have to show respect, and then they're abusing referees the next minute. So I
think they need to get these yahoos off the sideline as well, to be honest with you. And the onus is on the clubs not to have lads or ladies involved that are a law unto themselves and a law unto their club as well. That the onus is, like, everyone's vetted now to be involved in a GA club, but sometimes within a club they need to vet people as well, and they need to vet who they have involved in a team, and making sure that the people who are representing them are representing them the way they should be. Like it's okay, like, you know, talking to a referee, or, you know, there's a dubious call and you're letting them know that, you know, it was that might have been a bad call or whatever, but you know, the idea of people coming in on the pitch after referee and like that just need to be moving away from having any of these people involved on the sideline with a club. If they're going to be involved at board level where they can keep their cool or something like that, fair enough, but not being involved on match day where they're a liability to themselves and their clubs and potentially to a referee as well.
Yeah, so I just want to show the video of Andy Moran getting clapped off after his last game with Balladreen. You can see, nice moment for him.
Yeah, and he was presented with a jersey. I think he was presented with the 14 jersey after. Like, here's a lad. He's probably gone across the guts of. Definitely gone across 3 decades, and he won't be far off 4 decades, I'd say, with Balladreen. Balladreen's a funny one, isn't it? Like, part of Balladreen is in Roscommon, isn't it?
I'd say there's probably not too many parts of it in Mayo.
There you go. It's amazing we talk about that. Like, there's obviously like parts of Shinrone are nearly in Tipperary, parts of Donegal are in Offaly, and whatever parts of Carrig are in Tipperary and Offaly. Yeah, the GA is a fascinating. It's a fascinating organisation, you have to say. I wouldn't. There's most of it I wouldn't change now, to be fair.
Yeah, and as goes without saying, there's an awful lot of good in it as well. So we saw this from the Kilcormac Camogie Club. They warmed up for their county semi-final in jerseys commemorating their friend and teammate Aisling Murphy. Each jersey was numbered 23, which was Aisling's age, and Nibeg Lahaid Aunarish. There'll never be the likes of you again across the shoulders. So that's pretty touching stuff. I have to say I did find that very touching when I saw that.
That was it's a lovely thing for the family, and just to see how she was a very, very important member of the Kilcormac Camogie team, and just a lovely way of remembering someone, and just showing that they'll always be in, you know, Aisling will always be in their minds, and it's nice for the family as well. And even just chatting to Willie Dunphy yesterday and he was saying about how they lost some members of their club, and, you know, gestures like that and days like yesterday in Laois, like, not to say that they provide solace for people, but it's nice to know that someone is remembered and you're always thinking of them, you know. And the GA is great for doing things like that, and sticking by people when their need is greatest.
Absolutely. So that's it from today's show. A reminder, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off the huge range of jerseys and tops that they have there. Just for today's show, if you want to win 2 tickets for a coaching clinic of your choice, please put in your comment at the end of the show. We'll be choosing one between now and the Thursday show. The best comment, assuming that you do follow us on all the social channels, will win those 2 tickets there. So that's about the height of it, Mick.
Just a quick one. Just a quick one before we go, Shane. The Reeling in the Hurling Years fundraiser for GAA is on Thursday, October 13th. All tickets on Eventbrite with Mickey Hart, Barry Geraghty, Dalo, Cyril Farrell, Michael Dignan, that big Dan, Eddie Brennan, Brendan Maher, you name it, is going to be there tonight. You're going to be there tonight. I'll be there. It should be great. I'll crack. The tickets are selling like hotcakes at the moment. So if you want to be there, I'd get on to Eventbrite fairly lively. So yeah, it should be an absolutely brilliant night, and only 20 bob for a great cause. And lastly, before we go, who's your goat of the week? My goat of the week, from a hurling point of view, I've talked about it several times throughout the show, but Willie Dunphy was brilliant. I was sitting beside Barry McAvoy from the Nationalists yesterday and just said to him after a couple of minutes, Willie got the ball in his hand and go over a point, and you just kind of, when you know it's going to be his day, when a lad is on, and he was absolutely on form yesterday. He was brilliant, finished at 1-5. He's definitely my hurling goat of the week anyway.
Yeah, Erling Haaland is my soccer goat of the week. I give goat of the week, I suppose. Like you, I'll stick with you with the hurling one, but I'll say Andy Moran for the football goat of the week, considering 3-3 in his last game.
Yeah, good. Your description of what Shane Walsh did for Kilmacud yesterday has swayed me to think that he is the goat of the week from a football point of view, especially in the absence of Paul Mannion. It sounds like he absolutely controlled things. SSRI just said Trevor Fletcher, future Offaly manager, potentially, and he's definitely going to be a future Kilcormac manager, I'd imagine. And while they're sore this morning about having him, having him been their undoing yesterday, I'm sure they probably will head in his direction in a couple of years. He's got a really good CV under his belt now, and it's interesting. He's obviously a Tipperary man, but he said he actually shouted for Offaly in the minor final this year because he knew. It surprised me as well. He said he knew so many of the Kilcormac lads personally, and he didn't know any of the Tip lads personally. And sometimes you maybe buy into who you know than just sticking with your county allegiance. Maybe he's obviously living in Offaly for over the last decade, but potentially I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we saw him at inter-county level over the next couple of years.
Okay, well that's it from the show today. We'll see you all again on Thursday. Don't forget to get commenting, and we'll chat to you then, Michael.
Cheers, Shane.